Hello everyone, my name is Mirza Jimenez and I'm trying to be chipper because it is my morning before I go to work. So yeah, I might be a little jittery from coffee, but if you are also getting ready for work, or maybe this is your bedtime story, or maybe your afternoon slump that you need kind of a pick-me-up, well then, keep on listening because I have a pretty terrible case to talk about today. It's about this Judy Buenoano. Buenoano is kind of like how you say it all together, I guess. She's a terrible person that murdered people closest to her. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And she did it for all for money. She wasn't not that she had this like thing for killing people or habits or tendencies. She just was super greedy and she killed for money. So if that sounds crazy to you, or if you haven't heard of this person, or maybe you have, but you kind of want another summary of it, another perspective, then keep on watching. Okay, so like I said, I don't know if I already mentioned, but I'm literally getting ready for work. It's just the only time I have. I don't really have another reason for it. So sorry for that terrible intro. I don't really have one yet, but I do want to talk about this story. So let me start with Judy Buenoano. I'm looking for my makeup. She was born in 1943, and I believe the town is called Quanah, Texas. And she was born to a farmer and to a stay-at-home mother. Her dad was Jesse Welty, and her mom was Mary Lou Welty. But there have been other sources saying that her mom's name was actually Judius, which is spelled Judys, Judius Welty. Well, because of her husband. Um, and apparently that's how Judy got her first name Judy, because it was after her mom. So that's just speculation, doesn't really matter. There wasn't much said about her parents, but the only other big thing that was kind of said was, according to Judy later on in life, this kind of just describes Judy in general, like kind of foreshadowing what kind of person she's like: manipulative, a liar, blah blah blah. You get it, because oh, my mirror, I didn't realize you could see it. She would say that her mom was from a Native American tribe named the Mesquite Apache tribe, but then there was no record that that was actually true. So it's just kind of like there was no record that that was even a legitimate tribe. So it just kind of like goes on to be, it's just kind of like, why even make that up? So, and if this doesn't look like it matches, it probably doesn't match that well, but I have a lot of redness, which is why it's looking like it's not matching. Not that it's just too yellow for me. Hopefully I can blend it in, because a lot of times the foundations don't look like they match me when I first put them on. But this might actually not match me. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just delusional. Okay. So, anyways, she had a pretty like rough upbringing, and that's the case with many people that go on to become like killers or serial killers or serial, murderers, rapists, etc. You get it, because she had a terrible upbringing. Because when she was 4, her mom passed away from tuberculosis, so she didn't really get to know her. So then, when that happened, she had 3 siblings in total, and her and her younger brother were had gone off with their grandparents. Her dad was still alive, but I don't know why he had to get rid of all of his children. But he seemed like he was capable of taking care of children. Obviously not if he did this. Maybe it's better that he had some time away from them, because he seemed pretty terrible. But her dad had given her 2 younger siblings up for adoption, and then Judy and her other younger brother Robert, I believe, went with their grandparents. And whenever Judy was 10 years old, this foundation is high coverage AF. When Judy was 10, the dad took them back for some reason, whatever reason, I'm not really sure why. So he had remarried and he had, so he had a wife. And this is where I don't understand why he had to give him up. He seemed capable because he had a whole nother family with the wife's stepchildren, but whatever. And whenever she moved back, so she moved to New Mexico where with her dad, her and her brother. And whenever she moved back with them, I'm not sure about the brother, but she was severely bruised. She was beaten, she was burned with cigarettes. Yeah, I don't think she was sexually abused, but I could be wrong, but she was definitely severely physically abused. And she endured this for like 4 years, and because whenever she was around 14, she struck back and she like beat like her dad and like the stepmom, which at this point I'm like, you go girl, you know what I mean? Like I am not mad at that at all. So I think adults also need to be disciplined when they're huge pieces of shit like that. Because of that, she went to basically she, got went to juvie, I guess for like 60 days. And after the 60 days, she was given the option to either go to reform school or to go back to live with her dad, which her brother was still there. And she hated them and she never went back. She never saw them after she, got locked up for a couple months. And she even said, whenever she was asked of her brother, she said, I wouldn't spit down his throat if his guts were on fire. I wouldn't spit down his throat if his guts were on fire. That took me like 4 takes, which that is crazy. I'm looking at her makeup and that looks crazy too, but whatever. And that was that. Never saw her family again. And whenever so when after she went to that reform school, she graduated when she was like when she was 16, and she had moved back. So the reform school that she went to was in Albuquerque. Albuquerque is a pretty big city in New Mexico. So when she graduated, she went back to the same, I guess, town where she had went to live with her dad, which was in Roswell, New Mexico. And there she had all of a sudden become pregnant, and she had a child um, with a man that wasn't really known of. But it's speculated that she had a baby with a man named Leroy Schultz, and he was he was an Air Force sergeant, and I believe that's probably correct because she did change her name to Anna Schultz. So I'm guessing I don't know if his first name was accurate, but I'm pretty sure that might have been his last name because as the story goes on, you can see that she likes changing her last names. So to like her spouses, or even if they're not her lover's last names, basically, she likes changing her name a lot. So I'm going to say that that probably was the actual name of the father of her son. But nonetheless, nothing happened with them. Basically, she was a single mother. So she had given birth to her first baby, Michael. In 1961, she was 17 years old. Then I guess that same year she met this guy, James Goodyear. They actually got married in 1962. So people just really moved along really fast back in the day. I mean, it still happens to this day. Now she is Judy Goodyear, and he actually takes Michael, her son, her biological son, not his biological son. He actually takes him and actually adopts him. So it's actually really neat. Good guy. And then about 4 years later, so in 1966, they have James Jr. So then this is her second son, but like James Sr.'s first son. And then the next year, 1967, they have another girl. Well, they have a girl, like not another girl, Kimberly Goodyear. And now they've become what seems to be at this point I don't know, pretty happy family, I guess, right? James is in the Air Force. So they end up moving to Orlando, Florida. And whenever they move to Orlando, then he gets deployed to Vietnam for a few months. And so Judy and the children are left alone, so then he comes back And then he all of a sudden falls ill. This is the 1970s, so things kind of slip. They kind of fall through the cracks a little more. So apparently, when he was in the hospital, I guess the doctors, the staff said that he was suffering from like mysterious symptoms. He's in the hospital. He gets really sick. He falls severely ill, and unfortunately, he passes away. And they stated that his cause of death was cardiovascular collapse and renal failure. No toxicological screening was performed at the time of his death, so that kind of also doesn't make it easier to really get down to what the true cause was. But also, I guess there was no reason to suspect because I'm not sure if this had a part to play with it, but he had gone to Vietnam, so I think there's some sort of speculation that he may have caught something going to Vietnam, when he returned, and that's kind of what had to do also with his like mysterious symptoms. As heartbreaking as that may be to a normal wife, Judy was like, cha-ching. She went like 3 or 5 days later, right after he passed away. Right after he passed away, to cash out his life insurance, which is like for $85,000. And again, this was in the 1970s. So that was a lot of money. Like $85,000, 1970s, even in today's world, in today's like economy, it's a lot of money. Back then, like what was that, like over 300, 400, I don't know. And on top of him dying, mysteriously her house caught on fire. Gosh, what a tragedy. So much is happening to this poor woman. And then when with her insurance for that, she got $90,000. And we're still talking about the 1970s. Like, how freaking insane is that? So in total she got $175,000, again in the 1970s. Like, dude. So at this point, she is still in Florida, right? Because she had moved with James. Since she's in Florida, she meets this guy in Pensacola, Florida, by the name of Bobby Joe Morris. They don't actually get married, but like I said before, she likes to take people's names. So she ended up taking his names. So then for a while, she was Judy Morris, and they weren't actually legally married, but that's just what she liked to do. Meets this guy, Bobby Joe, takes the last name. They're in Pensacola. They move with the guy. And now Judy has to sort of deal with the problems that her son started to present to her, because apparently he had, it's kind of darker than I thought. Apparently he had quite low IQ. Low to where like he needed to actually get some psychiatric treatment. So she just psychiatric treatment, you think, okay, well that costs money, right? And from what the events that happened prior to where she was she had acquired a bunch of money, not that long ago, before getting into a relationship with Bobby Joe, she had a significant amount of money because of those events. But instead, for whatever reason, this kind of just shows the relationship that she had with Michael, which wasn't very loving, and to say the least. Instead of like her paying for the psychiatric treatment, she decides to put her son Michael into foster care, so the state or the government could pay for that psychiatric help. Like, how crazy is that? She had to still have some of that money, if not like a bunch of that money that she had received. At some point, Bobby Joe, for whatever reason, he wants to move or needs to move to Colorado. He actually invites Judy and the kids, like the whole family, to move with him, and she agrees. She actually does pull out her son Michael out of foster care to take him with them. So I kind of thought that was kind of nice of her based on the kind of person she is. I'm like, oh wow, like she's not totally cold-hearted all the time. But we'll get to that later, because she may have had You know, she may have done that for her plans later. But of course, before something has to happen, right? So another house fire. She's in another house fire. Her house burns down again, and she collects another like huge chunk of money. That was 1977. So whenever they move, then 1978 comes around, and then you know, Bobby Joe mysteriously gets sick. You know, we're starting to see a pattern, right? Are you not? No, too soon? Okay, well, let's keep going. So he mysteriously gets sick. Then, so he's admitted to the hospital and he actually does get like released again. I guess they like don't really figure out what's going on with him. Apparently, they were like the same symptoms that James, you know, Judy's prior husband that passed away was experiencing, but still they were still mysterious. So they do end up releasing him because he does get better. But then just like 2 days later, they're like having dinner, and you know, he's having dinner with Judy and the kids, and he collapses, and then he actually does pass away like at the house. So it's like he did make it out for a little bit, but then, you know, he, whatever was going on with him returned or worsened, and then he ended up passing away a couple days later. She doesn't wait very long again. She cashes out like 3 policies that he had. Whenever he died, the family actually did suspect Judy of like his death. He made like some confession on his deathbed, Bobby Joe, saying something about like Judy, we should have never done it. Bobby Joe's mom had overheard Judy and Bobby Joe talking about some like, oh, he should have never like came back or something, implying that someone had came back and that's why they ended up murdering him or something. But she was also suspected in a death of like a Florida man that was found in a motel. And they had gone in that motel or something at the time. They had visited the area. And so basically, she got caught up in some other thing and she was suspected of another murder. But then this time, Bobby Joe was involved, you know, was like also involved. And it's just crazy how not only is she suspected of certain, you know, of these deaths herself, but she's also like involving other people. So yeah, basically there's this other murder that she was suspected of as well. And you just never know what is going on with this lady. I'm just kind of lightly mentioning it because it really never gets resolved. Bobby Joe passes away of a mysterious death that was similar to James Goodyear's death, her first husband. So he passes away, cashes out policies. I guess she's done with that area because she only moved for Bobby Joe, you know, probably other reasons than just to move with him. And then, so she decides to move back to Pensacola where she was prior. And that's when Michael, you know, he's pretty much grown up. Her son, Michael, he's pretty much grown up and he decides that he wants to enter the army. So he enlists and joins the military. He was assigned to go to Fort Benning, Georgia. And so on his way there, he stops at Judy's house and then, you know, spends time, whatever. So then whenever he like arrives to Fort Benning, he comes down with some mysterious illness. And he you know, he gets admitted to the hospital, and that's where they find a severe amount of arsenic in his body, several times more the normal level, like 6 or 7. So they couldn't do anything to reverse the damage that was already done. So 6 weeks after the first exposure, his arms and legs had atrophied so much that he couldn't even walk or like use his hands, and I think not like just his limbs in general, sir. So he couldn't even walk normal. Beginning in January of 1980, he underwent 3 months of physical therapy and physical rehabilitation for profound heavy metal neuropathy. It's defined as a degeneration of nerves outside the spinal column, which leaves a person with no nerve or muscle function below their knees or elbows, so no nerve or muscle function on their limbs. The doctors had to give him heavy metal braces, and these braces weighed like 60 pounds. So he had to carry that weight on top of his limbs, not him not being able to use his limbs. He had to carry an extra 60 pounds. For a regular person that can use like their, body, all their body parts, that's heavy. So imagine for someone that can can't help themselves with like their hands and their feet. So of course the doctors tell him like, he's gonna have to take safety precautions. But the main thing was like not getting into water because he could easily sink because he can't use his limbs, and he has this heavy metal like gear, armor on him. So then he gets discharged from the hospital. Apparently Judy like spent like $40,000 on, making the home, tailoring the home and his space so he can like do his rehabilitation and have his, his home care at their house. Supposedly, according to her, it was $40,000, which yes, she can afford at the time because of all the money she had gotten prior, but it was just it's interesting because if you're like, if you've been following along before, whenever he needed psychiatric treatment, she didn't want to pay for it, but now she pulled him out of the hospital to have rehabilitative care at home. But before, when he was like a child, she didn't want to pay for the psychiatric treatment and put him in a foster home. But now she's like pulling him out of the hospital. Later on, at some point, she decides, because she's just this brilliant person, to take Michael, the one in braces now and those gears, James and Kimberly, which are her younger children with James, canoeing. Okay, so this is how it happened. James, Michael was supposed to sit in like this long chair on the canoe, and I guess the other kids were just gonna be on there too, and it was gonna be all four of them, but Michael was supposed to be on a lawn chair, on a canoe, in his braces. Like, come on. So then the following events were, of course, the following events were questionable because this is kind of what happens according to Judy, since she was there to witness everything. So they were on the canoe, and then out of nowhere, a snake appears on the canoe, and then Judy starts trying to fight it off. She's trying to hold it down with a paddle, and then the canoe just like flips over and everybody just falls over. And James, the middle child, her younger son, gets knocked unconscious, and so he doesn't really wake, so he like loses conscious, and he doesn't wake up until he's in the ambulance. you know uh Coincidentally, he was knocked out for whatever reason. I'm not really sure where the girl Kimberly was. She wasn't mentioned that much. I'm guessing like she was okay. Maybe she just fell or something, but like, she was okay basically. But of course, Michael was the one that, he like also fell, but he was in braces, so he couldn't. That was the number one worst situation he could have been in. At first, when they asked James, again, the middle child boy, whenever he was stating verbally, when they had first asked him, he mentioned the snake. But then whenever he did a written statement to the army investigator, he didn't mention the snake. And that's where you can kind of think about it more, when you're writing it, like when you're saying things, like it's kind of, but when you go back and write and think about what you're saying, usually that's where you remember more details, or maybe like, I don't know, the truth, especially if like you're not trying to lie. You're going to write down everything that you remember, according to you. And he didn't mention a snake, so that was weird. And then there's this guy Ricky that was fishing at the time of when the events took place, when the family had fell into the water because of a snake supposedly. And he said that he, was trying to help them out, and he had actually helped Judy and James from the water. And then I guess whenever it came to like looking for Michael, she said, quotes, lost the other boy. And then she said the canoe overturned when she was trying to hold the snake down with the paddle. That's when the canoe overturned, I guess. And then she said it was useless to go back and look for Michael. Like, what the fuck? Like, okay, let's just say that it was a really bad situation, and for some reason, like, you know that your child can't make it, like, for example, him, because he had braces. And let's say she wasn't like this evil weirdo, right? You would still want to like make sure you would still want to retrieve your child, whether you know they can't make it or not. Like, in whatever condition they are, you would want to retrieve your child, right? A normal mother would want to retrieve their child no matter what condition. Okay, so where were we? Had a lot of technical difficulties. Battery was dying, some card was full, my lights were going off, whatever. So in the meantime, I kind of like started getting ready more, did my makeup more. So I probably look different. I think the only thing that's like the same is the background and my shirt, which did not change. Let's move on. Just had to explain the changes because I know the jump cut was going to go straight to the change. All right, so I'm going to finish my eyeshadow. Great. This is a really good video. He said, yeah, that she only seemed concerned for James and wasn't even trying to even attempt to look for Michael. And he's the one that freaking disappeared, you know? She also said that she had swam downstream to try to look for him, but the current was too strong. It was a pretty still day in the water, like it was pretty calm, so that didn't align with the story at all. And it was also said that her statement and James' statement, there were factors that were different that they both should have, stated correctly, since they both were together. The cops were kind of taking her statement down, like were kind of going with it, but the Army investigators were not. They were not having it. So they just weren't believing this. Well, they had done their own investigation, and they probably were more suspicious whenever Judy received $20,000 from a life insurance policy that Michael had. So there was something to, receive if he were to pass away. So that was like the first policy, but with all the policies added together that he had because of his death, like Judy Buenoano was granted up or around $100,000 in total because of his death. So, red flag, red flag, red flag. So, of course, people, try not to think the worst of a parent, especially a mother. Okay, and I want to go back on the police department, the sheriff's department, not suspicioning her. They did suspicion her. They just didn't have enough evidence to actually charge her. I guess it was all circumstantial. Like, a lot of it was like suspicious and coincidental and stuff, and just hard to believe, but nothing that they could actually pin her down for. And I think the Army investigators were just like, hell no, like she's lying. But maybe the same happened. Like they just didn't have enough to charge her, to prove that it was her fault, that she had done it deliberately. So again, she like moves on, and she gets away with it at that time. And after she receives all her money, that was in 1978, that same year, later that year, she starts seeing a man named Gerald. And it's crazy because I didn't find that much with this from what I was researching and listening to and all that stuff. I didn't find that much myself. There may be more information out there with him, but he wasn't like a huge like talking point in what I was reading. And he mysteriously got ill again and passed away, but there wasn't really much to that other than that, which obviously is just as big. There's nothing to discuss that I found to where I could just point at her again and be like, really, really? So again, mysteriously ill. And so she opens a business because she has a bunch of money. And she opens a beauty salon. She starts dating a man from Pensacola. Apparently, he's like a businessman. Of course, someone with money, right? That would probably, well, that might have a life insurance policy, you know. So, someone that's going somewhere and is trying to save for the future, that's the man that she wants. I mean, that's the man that anybody should want, but I'm just saying, especially her. So, she starts dating him. His name is John Gentry. She had told him that, okay, it's one thing to lie about like education, but she said she had like a freaking PhD in like biology or biochemistry, like crazy. Like, it's one thing if you lie about your undergrad. That's I mean, I'm not saying do it, but I'm just saying like that's still a little bit more entry level, kind of more basic studies. Now, don't get me wrong, I know certain degrees are super hard and stuff, but like PhD, you guys, oh my God. And not just a PhD, and I'm not trying to undermine like certain studies, but I mean, you have to admit some things are harder than others. PhD is never going to be easy, but some things maybe, you can get away with more. But if you're like talking about biology or biochemistry or like something medical or scientific, that's very like specific technical knowledge, unless you just know how to lie about those things and nobody fact checks you. I don't know. Anyways, they must have not had a bunch of conversations about, those topics though, for someone to believe them, to kind of like believe them that long, I'm guessing. Because I would be asking all kinds of questions. If I was dating somebody that said, oh, I have a PhD in like biochemistry, I'd be asking a bunch of questions. But if you don't, then I guess you can get away with it. Poor Michael is not in the picture anymore. Rest in peace. Judy, she suggests that they should take out life insurance policies on each other. So she had suggested that they take out a $50,000 life insurance policy on each other. So her take out one, and so they ended up doing that, and they named each other as a beneficiary. So they did that, but then later on, Judy went back and changed his life insurance policy to $500,000. And again, this is like at this point, this is in the 80s now, but still, like, inflation has gone up. It's a lot more money these days. But even in today's economy, $500,000 is still a bunch of money. So can you imagine back then? Oh my God. And I guess she like paid the premiums herself, so he didn't notice. So John Gentry gets a cold in 1982. And of course, anyone can be like, oh, a cold. I mean, that anybody gets it, right? Or at least symptoms of a cold. I mean, that happens. Judy Buenoano, she suggests that he take these vitamin C capsules. And again, he thinks that she has a PhD, that she had gone to nursing school, that she has all this medical background. So he was like, oh yeah, like, I mean, he trusted her, right? Especially because they've been dating for a while now. And I guess to this point, I had read that, I mean, it started kind of sizzling down, and, it got to the point where she was being kind of weird and stuff, but he just, I guess, kept going with it. I think he started questioning the relationship, but it wasn't to where, like, from what I read, that from what I could tell, that they were like fighting a lot or anything. I think the sex life had, kind of changed. It wasn't the same, the romance, the intimacy. I'm not sure if they got along as well, but it was just a lot different. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, um, but at this point they're okay. And, I mean, so he ends up taking the vitamin C capsules, and then he started getting worse. Of course. My eyeliner look good. God, this eyeshadow is super pretty. I feel like this light is kind of terrible. I'm so sorry. But so Judy had told John to keep taking or double the dose, because she said double the dose, you're not taking enough. So he does. He gets worse. So he checks himself into the doctor, and I thought it was funny that it said he checked himself into the doctor. Like she didn't, I guess she didn't take him, even though he's like super sick. And he was actually there for 12 days in the hospital, or about 2 weeks, 14 days, 12 days. I'm not sure. Around 2 weeks. And what was ironic is that he ended up getting better, which I guess that's what you go to a hospital for, right? To get better. So it's not super suspicious. But I don't think at that point he had connected the dots that he had stopped taking those vitamin C pills and he got better, but maybe he just figured whatever they did to me at the hospital was stronger than the vitamin C pills, and that's why I'm better. That was probably his thought process, but he didn't think, oh wow, once I stopped taking those vitamin C capsules, I got better. Whenever he gets checked out and he goes back home, it's funny, and funnily enough, he starts taking the vitamin C pills again. I don't know if the double dose, but just, he starts taking it again, and he starts getting sick again, but then eventually he got better. So I guess because he got better, maybe he was over the cold, and maybe he decided, I'm just, it's just kind of hard to keep up with vitamins anyways, like in my opinion. So I'm sure he was like, just screw it, I'm not going to take it anymore. I felt better before. So he just stopped taking them altogether since he wasn't sick with the cold anymore. And then, so they're just kind of chilling, continuing this boring relationship. That's what I gathered, that it was kind of boring, dwindling down. I guess they weren't getting along that much anymore. But then, out of nowhere, she decides to tell him that she's pregnant. And I say that because, okay. So, that's when he's like, okay. I don't think he was super ecstatic about it. I don't know that anyone showed emotions that either party was ecstatic, but it was during a day that she was going to throw a party for one of her employees because the employee was moving. So she was throwing the employee a going away party at her salon, at her beauty salon. Remember, she has a salon. So she tells him on that day, and she had already like asked him to do stuff like, hey, can you go to the beauty salon and like kind of keep people busy or something while she goes does something else. She had this like weird request to have him park somewhere kind of out in the parking lot, like kind of far away from the restaurant, from where they were going to have the party, because kind of far away from where they're going to have the party, even though he was at the party to kind of attend guests. She told him to park like far away, she in a particular area, and her excuse was, oh, where you wanted to park, I had been sort of approached by someone, and I don't want that happening again. Like, I don't know if that guy's nearby, so just don't park there, park over here. And I think he did think it was weird, but she had just told him that she was pregnant, so he was like, okay, I don't want to question anything. I'm just gonna do whatever she wants me to do, that kind of thing. Maybe not just because she was pregnant, but also because she's been acting funny. So he just wanted this day to go like, okay. He was like, all right, whatever. That was supposed to happen. And also that same day, he had waited on her son James to install some speakers in his car, and whenever he had gone away and then came back, still wasn't done, and also James wasn't there, so everything was just kind of weird. But he didn't really think much of it because he just figured James maybe didn't feel like doing it, maybe he wasn't going to do it yet. He was hoping he would do it like then and there, because I guess it wasn't supposed to be a big deal, but it didn't happen. So he was like, whatever, I'll just take my car without the speakers. And he was just trying to get through the day, with no like weird argument or tension or anything. So, whenever he went to that dinner party thing, he was coming back. He was gonna leave because apparently she was gonna go out with her, that group of friends. Continue the party for her going away. So he just said like, go home and then we can, I don't know, hang out or something. So whenever he's finished doing his part and he's going back to the car, he turns it on or something, or does he turn it on? Yeah, I think he does turn it on, and bam, the car freaking explodes. And the crazy part is that he survived. That's the crazy part. I don't know if I've heard of a story where somebody survives a car bombing. Of course, he was severely burned. I mean, and he had multiple surgeries. Surgeons barely saved his life. He would have died if like they probably didn't do it fast enough. Like if he was there for a while waiting for help, but they got him help on time, and he freaking survived, you guys. That's when everything goes to shit. So the bombing happened like sometime in June of 1983, and then he was, you know, in the hospital like for a while, for maybe a couple of weeks or something. But towards the end of June, he was finally able to speak to the cops, and that's when they find out about a bunch of suspicious stuff, like, you know, like the fact that they had policies on each other, and that she suggested that they get policies on each other, and they started looking into her background, and that's when they found out that pretty much her whole life story that John had said that she had said was a lie, and that they also found out that she wasn't actually pregnant. And I don't know if I had mentioned this before, but she did already had like her tube side to where she couldn't get pregnant. So, if I didn't mention it, whoops, but oh well. I guess I saved the surprise to the end. She was so confident that this was going to work in her favor, that this was going to work out all perfectly, because she had already booked a cruise with her family, but not John. Like, she bought the tickets for her children and herself, but not John. And then she was telling like family members and friends that John was like was suffering from a severe illness, preparing them, you know, and like for his death, I guess. I don't know if she did that with, you know, her other husbands, but yeah, maybe she was trying to make it different so it wouldn't be like mysterious death after mysterious death. Like she might have been trying to do it differently so there wouldn't be suspicion. But yeah, you guys, she was that freaking, what a dumbass. Like, what an evil person. She's like beyond a dumbass, right? She's freaking evil. But so what really made them really investigate further into like her history of like her husband's passing away was the fact that John also, of course, mentioned the fact that she had been giving him those vitamin C pills, which was making him sick. So they ended up like taking like those capsules and testing it, and they found out that they were severely poisonous. Those vitamins, you know, quote unquote vitamins, actually had arsenic and formaldehyde. You guys, I hate that I say you guys a lot, but I can't help it. Use guys, y'all. I'm from Texas. I say y'all, but when I'm like in a video, I'm like, you guys. Anyways, I think I try to avoid saying y'all. That's why I say you guys. For some reason, even with all this evidence, you know, that she had been poisoning her husband and stuff, the Florida state attorney declined charges of attempted murder against her, stating that there was insufficient evidence. I don't how that's pretty wild evidence to me, but I don't know all the technicalities and laws and stuff, but what the fuck? I guess I just needed something more than that to go with the trial. I don't know if some of these policemen knew about her history or what, or like have heard about her case, but they were not giving up. They're like, we are getting this like bitch. We're getting this woman. So they had searched her house, and they had found wire and tape, the same, I guess the same type that was in the car bombing. It's kind of crazy how even though it exploded and you think everything was like burned to pieces, they were still able to like match that. Because they found that evidence, and they also found marijuana and like some kind of shotgun in James' room. So they arrested both him and Judy, James for like drugs and illegal possessions, and Judy for, you know, having that that wire and that tape, you know, and they're tying her to like the car bomb. And she had paid her bail, and she was released, I think, that same day or within a very short period of time. Because even then, that wasn't like huge evidence. It was very significant evidence, but I guess not enough to keep her in even after paying bail. So, what really I want to say maybe hit the nail on the head was that they had came and they had gotten a hold of a long distance call that had tied her to the dynamite that was in the bomb, you know, like. So with that, they like were not giving up on her. There's a detective that found out that her last name meant Goodyear, and they just started doing like history on her her past, and you know who she was married to, and then her common law husband, you know, Bobby, the one that she moved to Trinidad, Colorado with, and how they both mysteriously passed away from like poisoning, from having poison in their system. Especially I believe James Senior. He had like high levels of of poison in his body and in different organs, meaning that he was probably poisoned for a while. So it's not something that, you know, maybe he ate accidentally with poison. They read like the Army investigators' records about, I guess, their suspicion with her son Michael's death, and how they believe that she had pushed Michael off the canoe rather than a snake, you know, falling into it and, you know, fighting the snake. Like they never believed that story. They believed that he was pushed out, and they kind of gathered that evidence that of the records that they had, you know, with that incident. Their first murder trial began in 1984 for Michael. People testified, and there was like a neighbor that said that, you know, she just never seemed to like Michael. Whenever they had visitors over, she would watch him or tell him to go away. And there's another, I think it was Kimberly's boyfriend actually, that said that Kimberly told him that she had killed Michael in that boat. Oh, and for Michael's murder trial, she was sentenced in prison. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. And then there was a trial for the attempted murder of John Gentry, and she was sentenced to 12 years for attempted murder. There's also James Jr. You know, he was arrested too, for the illegal possessions, like the gun and then the marijuana. And, you know, some saw it as he was probably an accomplice because he either created the bomb or maybe he was involved in like the poisoning or something. But the jury, he just acquitted him, which, I mean, he was probably just under her manipulation anyways. I don't really think he really needed to. I don't know about that, because if he's willing to, but then again, he was Judy's son, and who knows, like, if she threatened him or what, or he might have been another victim in a way himself. I'm just not really sure how the children felt with Judy as their mother. Like, if they're scared of her or what. I mean, I'm sure if you have a parent that's capable of doing that, you probably are scared. Especially, I mean, she killed her own son, so who knows? Like, the kids could have been terrified of her. And then she finally went to a third trial for the murder of James Goodyear, and you know, she had witnesses on the stand as well. She had people who were on the stand as well, and there was this friend that for some reason, I don't know if they were just really close or what, or maybe like I don't know if Judy just needed like a confidant, like maybe she kind of like was more vulnerable with her because she didn't really have anybody that she could trust in life. She was just out there just tricking people, you know, and maybe with her, she felt like some kind of close relationship, like a true relationship. I do not know. But supposedly, like, according to this lady, she had confessed to killing James, and she even like gave her advice on how to kill somebody. Like, she had mentioned to her that she could get arsenic from the supermarket. Like, it was easy, like, you know, if you ever need to. So in 1985, she was found guilty for killing James. So this one, she was sentenced to death. With Michael's death, she was sentenced to life to life without the possibility of parole. But for James, she was sentenced to death. 3 trials, found guilty for all of them. Her lightest sentence was for John Gentry because he didn't actually die. But if he would have actually died, that would have probably been another life sentence. And it's funny because, you know, as ruthless and as merciless and as careless and sadistic that she is, she started crying and was trying to ask for mercy and to have her life spared. But it's just like, dude, like, why are you freaking out? Like, first of all, with all you did, like, you don't have any mercy for anyone. You killed your own son. And, you know, she tried to appeal. She tried to request that certain FBI documents be unsealed to, you know, further investigate. Basically, like, her and her lawyers were trying to postpone the execution, but none of that. I think they did some shuffling around and tried to hear people out and stuff, but her family tried to defend her, saying that she was this devout Christian, Roman Catholic woman, blah blah blah. But nothing. Like, it was done. Like, people were done with her, fed up. Like, they had learned about her case. They, you know, I'm sure cops that had investigated her before, like John Gentry, like her with her former husbands, the ones that were suspicious, I'm sure they were like, hell no, like, keep her in there. Like, we never believed her. We just never had enough evidence. Like, what's done is done. Put her away, you know, like, put her down. Are we mad? So her execution was set, and she was on death row for 13 years. So while a lot of people do think that, you know, people should probably just like rot in prison and not even get sentenced to death, I'll say 13 years is enough to suffer in prison, because, you know, she was all about life and luxury and killing, you know what I mean? So I think 13 years was enough to break her down, because at the end of the day, she was actually executed. And she maintained her innocence, never admitted that she did any of it. She said that everything was coincidental, and she said that she didn't kill Michael, and you know, she maintained her story, and she just never confessed. Sometimes prison will break you down if you know you're gonna like be executed. Sometimes they just say, screw it, like, I'm just gonna say everything. And that's how people, you know, make documentaries and a book. I mean, you can make books and documentaries without their confession, but a lot of times it's really interesting when they confess and tell you everything, you know, to get it from their first, like, their main point of view, which is probably the most interesting point of view. Although they could lie a lot, of course, but still, that's always like what you want the most. Well, not want the most. What you would want the most is for none of this to happen. But when it happens, you want the first-hand confession from the actual killer. But it just did not happen. She never stated anything that she did it. So she was executed in 1998, and she was the first woman to be executed in Florida since 1848. So before that, that was like 150 years. So 1848, you guys. Can you imagine? 1848. 1998 were harsher times, but 1848 was way harsher times. Like, in that time period, like, people were so much harsher with punishments, but yet, like, no one was actually executed, and she managed to be so horrible that she got executed. Poisoning your own son. I mean, of course, poisoning your husband is horrible, but poisoning your own son, who was a good kid. He, like, went to the military and stuff, like, trying to make something of himself, because, you know, he had trouble with his IQ. He had psychological problems. I don't know if that was tied to his IQ, or he just had other separate psychological problems based on his mother being like psychopath, you know. But he had a low IQ, and he was just having a hard time. And then he, like, went into the military. Just when he was about to start, she gets him, you know, like, just when he had signed off all his, you know, his life insurance policies, got all that in order, she did not give him any time, and she took it all. So sad. And that's all I have to say about that. What do you guys think about this case? It's pretty horrible. There is a book out there. I will put it down in the description. The book that I've kind of trying to get through. Where it's kind of like it's a novel, you know how these books are, but it's like so far I'm seeing it's from the perspective of John Gentry, the one that got away, the last boyfriend that got away in the car bomb. I'm not sure if like it changes from there or if it's just kind of through his viewpoint. But yeah, it's really interesting. I got off of Amazon, so if you guys are interested, I'll link it down below. But other than that, but that's all I have to say. Had to get to work now. I'm really sorry the lighting changed. The sun was coming up. I tried to cover it. My curtain fell, whatever. I have to figure out what to do with this hair now. And I don't know, maybe I will just go like this to work. I mean, I don't have like this super professional job that I have to look, neutral or whatever. I can look fun, so we'll see. But anyways, hope you guys liked it. Have a good morning, have a good night, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.